In the 17th century, composer Florian Gassman wrote a comedic opera, an opera buffa, called the Viaggiatore Ridicolo, or the Ridiculous Traveler. Ridiculous Traveler. You can imagine the story. A person sets off on a trip but is completely ignorant about the correct clothes, the correct destination, the correct currency, and probably the correct way to treat people. Why aren't things done while he is traveling in a strange world the way they are done at home? Why is there so much macaroni and cheese? You had to be here for last week's sermon to know why that's funny. How ridiculous he must have looked to passers-by. You can see how hilarity could ensue. During the time of Jesus, the Jews and the Samaritans traveled a lot around each other, but they did not like each other. The Samaritans lived in the northern kingdom of Israel, and first, the Samaritans worshipped Yahweh, as did the Hebrews, but unlike the Hebrews, they had no trouble calling God's name out loud. Yahweh! As you know, for the Hebrews, that was a no-no. The Samaritans accepted only the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The other books were about the Hebrews, and the Samaritans weren't included. But perhaps the biggest difference between the Samaritans, and their Hebrew sisters and brothers is this. The Samaritans were racially mixed. They were a mixed society of Jewish and other ancestry. They had intermarried with pagans. That was against God's ways, according to the Hebrews. If the Hebrews wouldn't put 2 kinds of seeds in a field, you can imagine how they felt about mixed seeds in a human. In the book of Leviticus, this is the basis of the Leviticus stance concerning homosexuality: no mixed seeds. When people are a lot alike but a little different, unless they intentionally listen to each other and learn from each other, they start to despise each other. And so the Samaritans became more and more despised by the Hebrews. Rather than contaminate themselves by passing through Samaritan territory, Jews who were traveling from Judea to Galilee or vice versa would cross over the River Jordan, bypass Samaria by going through Transjordan, and cross over the river again as they neared their destination. And the traveler Luke records that the Samaritans also came to harbor antipathy towards the Jews. There was no love lost on either side when it came to the Hebrews and the Samaritans. But in this story that we know so well, the story of the Samaritan that Jesus told, a man was on his way from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was robbed, beaten, and left for dead. You remember what happened. The Hebrew rabbi and the Hebrew Levite saw the man, and they crossed on the other side, crossed the Jordan, to avoid helping him. Oh no! They knew that if they touched him, even though he might have been dying, they would have been considered impure and unclean and could not then have entered the holy Mount Zion temple. It was better to let him die. But the Samaritan traveler went right up to the man and tended his needs. Why? Well, maybe in his travels, the Samaritan had listened to and learned enough from people who were a little different than he was. He had learned enough perhaps to be sick of the exclusive politics of the Hebrews and the Samaritans. Maybe he had learned again that they were all kin, all descended from the same tribes. They had all been through the same Babylonian captivity. Maybe the prejudiced holy codes of both the Hebrews and his own people, the Samaritans, seemed so silly and so outmoded to him. You and I are all Americans, yet I have heard so many people during this election time say, if he wins or if she wins, I can't live in this country anymore. I'm traveling to Where? Someplace where we don't know the customs? We'd all still be a lot alike and a little different. We'd all still be Americans. We'd all still be ridiculous travelers. There's a strong indication in this story that the Samaritan was a most seasoned traveler. There's a strong indication in this Jesus story that this Samaritan knew the road and lived by something that he might have called the code of the road. The scripture says when he saw the man on the road, he was moved not by politics, but by pity. The first thing that ran through the Samaritan's mind was not, if I touch him, how is that going to reflect on me? How will people look at me? What doors will be locked to me? Martin Luther King said the biggest impediment to intercultural progress in this country is not the haters. We know who they are. The biggest impediment is those of any race who fail to act because they are concerned what other people will think about them. What if I show up to church a little late with blood on my starched white shirt because I stopped to help somebody on the road? Would I be fit to stand in for Jesus and provide and preside at the communion table? There's a time when maybe that would not have been the case. Would I be fit to stand in this pulpit for Jesus and bring the message? I had blood on my shirt. There is a time maybe where that would not have been the case. What if we had to cancel Bible study in order to take a neighbor to the hospital? What would somebody say behind our backs? No. The first reaction of the Samaritan was to be moved or transformed or converted by pity, by compassion. Whatever the Samaritan had to do, whatever his schedule, it didn't matter. Here was a dying man on the side of the road with no one else to help him. The fourth verse of the 6th chapter of the 5th book that both the Hebrews and the Samaritans held as holy says this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Regardless of what the man looked like, where he had come from, or who he loved, the half-dead man and the Samaritan were one because they were cut from the same cloth. That was the ultimate code of the Samaritan's road, and is the ultimate holy code of the road that we all travel as people of faith. The Samaritan wasn't moved by that which kept them apart. He was moved by that which out on a lonely, dusty, dirty, treacherous road brought them together. They were one. That's the real code of the road we all travel, helping one another in distress. In this Samaritan story, just in case you want to believe that this Samaritan was just a traveler whose heart went out to this particular half-dead person because the half-dead person caught him on a good day, remember that the Samaritan was traveling with materials to help people. The Samaritan had bandages ready to wrap up wounds. The Samaritan had oil and wine ready to wash out the wounds so they wouldn't get infected, and more wine to give the man to drink so that he could keep him conscious. The Samaritan knew the wounded man couldn't walk, so he put him on his beast and he walked. The Samaritan took the man to an inn that he knew would take him because he knew the road and he knew who could stay where, and rather than commit the further indignity of again rifling through the injured man's pockets or possessions to see if the robbers had left any money so that the man's keep could be paid, or rather than just plopping the half-dead man up against the door, knocking on the door, and then running before anybody came, the Samaritan boldly took the man into the inn with a commitment. The Samaritan spent the night giving up precious sleep, taking care of the wounded half-dead man. What emerges here more and more is a man who is experienced at negotiating the customs of the road for the benefit of a man he didn't even know. Some might call the Samaritan ridiculous. Jesus knew him to be exemplary. Jesus knew him to be holy. But it gets better. You know the story. The next morning, before the Samaritan left the man, he told the innkeeper, "Here are not one, but 2 days' wages to make sure that you take care of him properly and to make sure that you do a good job. Keep a tally. When I come back this way, and I will, if it has cost you even more to take care of him, I will underwrite the expense that you have incurred. Heal him and spare no expense. This man I don't know. I am putting this man and I am putting my purse at your mercy, innkeeper." What made the Samaritan so good was not what he did. What makes the Samaritan so incredibly good was his preparation. When he left on his trip, he had packed and planned to help somebody else. That was the way he rolled. He was traveling with a contingency plan against systematic evil. He was traveling with a proactive plan for heavenly good. In this world where exchange students arrive in Italy on Thursday and are dead by Saturday, right there on the Tiber River where Michael and I stood just a week before, where countless terrorist attacks continue to happen both around the world and right here at home. In this world where there are videotapes of those in authority killing those of color who are not armed, and others who at one time served in the military forces and were sent home because they couldn't make the grade, others who were sent home and something in them died and left a hole where a bile of sickness festered and grew because they had not learned anything about other people. And that sickness manifested to hate so that they had to kill policemen. Where is the safety for any of us on the road? Safety lies not in our exclusive neighborhoods. Safety perhaps lies in our ability to build inclusive communities. Today, you and I are called to prepare for the worst by beating the best. Whether you and I are going to the drugstore or to Damascus, you and I are called to speak out. You and I are called to harbor and to heal. In the midst of death, we have trumpets to sound. Nothing is promised. Only the love of God. But I invite you to take one final look at this Good Samaritan story that we've all been raised with. The pity, the compassion, the bandages, the wine, the rescue, the inn, the denarii, the promising to come back and repay if there is more required. Is there any doubt that the Good Samaritan in this story is Jesus as the oppressed? Jesus is telling us that as we listen and learn, God's love may come in the person of those we most despise. In this turbulent, frightening world, now more than ever, let us imitate our Master.